Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Maryland Public Service Commission's administrative meeting for November the 29th, 2017. Before we begin, I would like to turn it over to Commissioner O'Donnell to recognize some special guests.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the point of personal privilege, I have some very special people visiting us here today at the Maryland Public Service Commission. I'd like to introduce them to the Commission, if I might. These ladies have been driving forces behind my public career for a long time, more than several decades, and Mr. Chairman, I guess you could say it's their fault that I'm here. Sitting out to the left of the five guests is someone very close to me, Della Stahl. She's like a second mother to me. Della, welcome. Next to her is Ella Ennis. Ella is a public servant extraordinaire, and she is a driving force behind getting me around where I should be. Next to her is Anita Brown. Anita has known me for a long, long time and has been very, very gracious in supporting me. Next to her is Judy McWilliams, and Judy and I go way back. But Judy has the distinction, Mr. Chairman, of being the mother-in-law of the former chairman of the Public Service Commission, Kenny Schisler. And Judy, you can look at our walls out here. You'll see his picture if you haven't already seen them. And next to her is Estelle R. Scott. Estelle is here as well, visiting, and has been a long-time supporter. So welcome, ladies. We're honored that you're here with us today. I'm personally very honored. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Let's turn now to our minutes from the November 15th and November 21st meetings. I will move to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. On to our administrative agenda.
Mr. Chairman, first item on the administrative agenda is the Office of Staff Counsel filed a motion to waive Comar vehicle age requirements applicable to for-hire vehicles for a limited amount of time.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Janice Flynn for this item. This is a motion filed by staff asking the Commission to waive the vehicle age requirements contained in Comar for taxicab and non-taxicab vehicles. Under current regulations, vehicles that are 10 model years or older may not be used as taxicabs, and non-taxicab vehicles cannot exceed 10 model years unless already permitted by the Commission. I note there are some exceptions to that rule that aren't applicable here. Currently, the changes to the current regulations were adopted by the Commission earlier this year in RM 58 and RM 60. These changes will extend the allowable motor vehicle age to provide that the vehicle may not exceed 12 model years for both taxicab and non-taxicab vehicles. These regulations are expected to become effective earlier next year. There is a group of vehicles that are currently permitted by the Commission that will be turning 10 model years of age at the end of this year and will be required to be removed under current regulations. But under the proposed regulations, the vehicles will qualify to operate for 2 more years. In order to avoid the inefficiency of removing the vehicles and reinstating them when the proposed regulations are final, staff is requesting a waiver of the age requirement for these currently permitted vehicles. Staff therefore recommends that the Commission grant the requested waiver of the vehicle age requirements contained in Comar 20.90.02.16d and Comar 20.95.01.11a6 for all Commission permitted vehicles as of today, November 29th, 2017, taxicab and non-taxicab, until July 1st, 2018, or as superseded by further effective regulation changes adopted by the Commission, whichever comes first.
Okay, any questions for our staff? Let's begin with Commissioner O'Donnell.
Just a quick question, Ms. Flynn. Do you know the precise status of the regs, where they're at? Are they before AELR, or do we know?
Well, I'm afraid I can't give you that. I can get you that information later.
No problem. I was just curious. I don't have a concern with the item.
Commissioner, I can actually fill you in a little bit about that. Actually, one set of regs are actually have been published in the Maryland Register for comment. We're waiting for comment. The other set is actually with AELR, ready to be released for publication.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Thank you.
Any Commissioner Rich?
Yeah, I was going to ask the very same question, where we are in the reg process. and I guess you just answered the question. We haven't received any comments one way or the other about. I was just curious to know if we've received any comments, that were extremely negative about the change, and we should be aware of that.
Not at this point. I haven't received any that have been filed to our attention. Of course, the deadline hasn't hit yet, but once that occurs, naturally the commission would be giving copies of all those comments.
Good. Thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, if not, we have a tricky motion. We will leave that in Commissioner Herman's capable hands.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we grant the requested waiver of the vehicle age requirements contained in Comar 2090-0216D and Comar 2095-0111A6 for all commission-permitted vehicles as of November 29th, 2017, taxicab and non-taxicab, until July 1st, 2018, or is superseded by further effective regulation changes adopted by the Commission, whichever comes first.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, item number 2, is Telco Pros, Inc. filed a request to amend its natural gas supplier license to include residential customers and to add the trade name TPI Efficiency to its gas and electricity supplier licenses.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Kenneth Albert on behalf of staff. As noted by the Secretary, this item does address a filing by Telco Pros that asks the Commission to do two things. First, the company asks the Commission to amend the company's natural gas supplier license to include residential customers. And second, the company asks to add the trade name TPI Efficiency to its natural gas and its electricity supplier licenses. As noted in the application, the State Department of Assessments and Taxation has recorded the new trade name. No complaints have been filed against the company at the Commission, and they are up to date on their Commission assessments. Therefore, staff asks the Commission to amend the natural gas supplier license to include residential customers and to add the new trade name.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? If not, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission grant the company's request to amend its natural gas license to include providing services to residential customers and grant the company's request to add TPI Efficiency as its trade name for both its natural gas and electricity supplier licenses.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda, item number 3, is the Potomac Edison Company filed a request for a waiver of CPCN requirements to work on the Ringgold, Catoctin, and Finsel Ridgely 138 kV transmission line.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Peter Wilson on behalf of staff. Public Utilities Article Section 7207 requires an electric company to obtain a CPCN prior to construction of an overhead transmission line designed to carry a voltage in excess of 69,000 volts. Construction related to an existing overhead transmission line is accepted, however, for repairs necessary to avoid an imminent safety hazard or reliability risk. Potomac Edison has notified the Commission that qualifying existing line clearance hazards were discovered on the Ringgold Catoctin line as a result of LIDAR inspection in September, and that these problems were repaired on an emergency basis. In addition, Potomac Edison requests a waiver of a CPCN for proposed construction of an additional wood H-frame structure to address a clearance hazard discovered on its Finsel Ridgely line. The proposed construction meets the mandatory CPCN waiver criteria of 7207B4I, which provides for a waiver upon the finding by the Commission that construction does not require the company to require or to obtain new property or right-of-ways through eminent domain or require larger or higher structures to accommodate increased voltage or larger conductors. Staff has investigated Potomac Edison's request, including documents submitted by Potomac Edison and Potomac Edison's responses to staff's data requests, and concluded the Commission was properly notified of the repairs made to the Ringgold Catoctin line, and that the request for the CPCN waiver for construction on the Finsel Ridgely line meets all of the statute's requirements and should be granted for the reasons set forth in detail in staff's comments. Staff recommends, therefore, that the Commission note the work performed on the Ringgold Catoctin line on an emergency basis and grant the requested mandatory waiver of the requirement to obtain a CPCN for the proposed construction on the Finsel-Ridgely line.
All right, thank you. Let's begin with questions for our staff. Start. Commissioner Rich.
I'd just be interested to know, does the company have to state whether it's a safety hazard or a reliability risk when they engage in this emergency repair clause?
Well, in this case, they stated that it was both, and
Okay.
I imagine that's often the case, but I don't know whether they have to, but in fact they have. So.
Okay, and on these two additional circuits that have been identified in one of the questions, do we know where in the analysis we are in those? Are those potentially safety hazards or reliability risks? Just as they're in current review, so I didn't know if we should be concerned about those as well, or exactly how the timeline on these things work.
We don't have the answer right now, we should be following up with the company, and we'll be very happy to hear from the company if they have any update on those two potential problems on those transmission lines.
Okay. And on the current, so this was a line that was constructed, I guess, around 1954, and it was in the last 10 years that this LiDAR survey was done. Is that correct?
The LiDAR survey was done recently, I believe in September.
Okay, so it's the September, and then the analysis was done. So that's the timeline. The LiDAR was done, and then the analysis was done pretty promptly. I was just trying to understand what the data request that indicated it was done within the last 10 years.
Oh yes, I believe the company does have a representative
okay.
here. So some of those questions they may be able to update you on the other work.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, why don't we bring the company up then, and they can go to the microphone on our left. And in the meantime, any other questions for our staff? Okay. Mr. Trout, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Jeffrey Trout. I'm counsel to the Potomac Edison Company. With me is Mr. Jeffrey Irons, who is the supervisor of transmission planning and is also the person who answered most of the data requests that staff posed. And hopefully between us we can answer any questions that you have about these filings. I'll preface it by saying this is the first time I have attempted to use these portions of the statute, and so the fact that you saw three consecutive filings by the company is in part a reflection of the fact that the circumstances did evolve over the course of the last several months, but it's also a reflection of the fact that it was my first try at trying to use this, and it took me a couple efforts to get it completely to my satisfaction, so, and hopefully to your satisfaction. So any questions that you have, we can, the two of us can try to address.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Rich.
Yeah, again, I was just trying to understand. I also was interested in this clause in the rule that allows for the safety or reliability emergency repairs, and so that's why I was interested in the timeline for the Ringgold-Catoctin line, and when it was found to be out of code, and then potentially a safety, and when actually the repair was done, and then 30 days, I guess, the statute requires that we be notified.
Sure. And I tried to spell this out. I think I may have gotten it better in the November 6th filing than I did in the original filing, but you also have the data request responses. Staff attached those to their buck sheet, and so I think the facts are all laid out there. The analysis of the LiDAR survey with respect to the Ringgold-Catoctin line was completed in I believe, late July, August timeframe, and we conducted the repairs immediately thereafter, with the exception of raising structure 60 on Ringgold Catoctin. That was originally going to be done then, but the phase riser unit had a malfunction, and it looked at the time that we made the first filing that we weren't going to be able to do that repair on that structure until December, which gave us time to come before you and ask for the mandatory waiver instead of just doing it and then notifying you afterwards. That's why we included that request. Then what happened was we'd been continuing to look at the situation and continuing to talk with PJM. PJM gave us an earlier outage on the line. Getting the outages so that it didn't interrupt service to customers was, of course, very important. We were able to get an earlier outage, so we did that work when we had the earlier outage. That's why we withdrew the request with respect to structure 60, notified you that the work had been done, and that left just for today the request for a waiver with respect to the new mid-span structure on Finzel Ridgely.
With regards to the, I guess it's pole number 60 that
Yes.
is that, well, once the equipment is in operation and you have the emergency access from PGM, is there, if this is a safety hazard or reliability issue, particularly on the safety hazard, is there anything being done now in that area to make sure that the public isn't in an unsafe situation?
Well, first of all, that work has already been completed.
Oh, pole number 60, I thought it was, okay.
Yeah. The November, like I said, there are 3 filings here, and I apologize for that. The November 6th filing that the company made, I think that's the date. Okay. The November 6th filing, we told the Commission that we had gotten the earlier outage, and we had gone ahead and performed the work on Structure 60.
Okay, so
I will say that with respect to all of this work, some of which was, significant work like adding a new structure or raising an existing structure, some of which was less significant work like putting weights on guy wires, but we included it all in the filing in perhaps a surfeit of explanation and disclosure so that the Commission would have all the facts. All of it goes to reliability, and because it affects the sag on the lines, it also goes to safety. But I think it's fair to say that all of this relates not to day-to-day operations of the line, but rather to sort of worst-case scenarios. We're required to make sure that the lines will operate safely and reliably under the worst-case possible scenarios. That's what the LiDAR analysis is designed to enable us to determine, and that's what led us to conclude that we needed to do this work. So while it is accurate to say there was a reliability risk and a safety concern, I don't want to overstate the significance of those. And again, I was struggling with how does this fit into the statute, and this was the best way I could figure to fit what needed to be done and what needed to be told to the Commission into the statute.
Okay, great. And then just final question, and just on in response to staff inquiry number 7, you do mention 2 additional 138 kV circuits in Maryland that require further analysis and possible action. Can you tell us where those circuits are and what the timeline is to conclude the I guess analysis of the current condition?
I'm going to let Mr. Irons speak to the details on that. It's my understanding that on both lines, it's potentially one structure that would need to be addressed, or one span that would need to be addressed. But I think Mr. Irons is your better source for the details on that. So this is Jeffrey Irons.
Morning. I'm expecting about 1 or 2 months before we get a decision on that. When we do the LiDAR surveys, we get preliminary reports that identify potential issues. And there's one issue on each of these two circuits in Maryland that we're still investigating. Some of the issues, we might have to do some ground surveys or double check the electrical loading to see how the sags relate to the LiDAR survey. So we're looking at these amongst all the issues that were identified in the whole First Energy footprint. So I'm looking at about the 1 to 2 month range.
And the location?
I'm sorry.
And did you state the location? I'm just interested to know where they are.
One line is Halfway Paramount, which is, I'm trying to think, I think it's northern Frederick County, I believe, and then Beddington Reed, which is near the eastern panhandle of West Virginia, in Maryland, though.
Okay, and you've determined at this point there's no imminent safety hazard that needs to be addressed, or it needs to be cordoned off or anything like that?
Not at this point.
No company action has been taken today. Okay, thank you.
correct.
That's it. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Mr. Irons, kind of a technical question on your preventive maintenance. How often, what periodicity do you do the LiDAR surveys on your transmission system?
Up until the NERC alert, I don't know if you're familiar with that term, we did not do any periodicity, no routine LiDAR surveys. There is it's called NERC alert by the National Electrical Reliability Council that was issued to all utilities in the country to do some type of investigation, LiDAR being one of our lines, and that was done in the last 10 years. And we are required then to do some sort of routine periodical inspection with LiDAR, most likely. But we actually have not come up with the pattern for that yet. We're trying to work it through the current set of issues that we came up with.
I appreciate that. It seems like the most precise measuring tool that you may have to use, but it's not incorporated into your PM program on a regular periodicity yet. Do you know what the rest of the industry is doing in Maryland in this regard?
I do not.
Okay, very good. I noticed in your response to staff data request 4 that it wasn't part of the regular program, but I suspect since there's this new standard that utilities are going to have to start incorporating this test at a more regular periodicity.
And we actually are doing, I failed to mention, our vegetation management group is doing a routine LiDAR inspection for tree reasons. We're trying to figure out how to incorporate that into our system as well in the investigation of clearances.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, Commissioner Linton.
Yes, good morning. I was hoping you could give me and give all of us an update on the staff data request 10 regarding the company's outreach efforts to consumers in the area that could be impacted by this line and the repair.
I don't have anything different than what was included. I believe whenever we have the issues, we reach out to the current property owners that are or could be affected and just keep them abreast of what's going on. If there are any damages that need to be taken care of as far as the time of year when we access the structures, but it's pretty much on a as needed basis to the property owners that are affected.
Okay, so the repairs, well, are these lines serving any residential customers? The 2 lines that they're still to be repaired on December 11th and the 18th?
They're transmission lines, so they're not really directly to a residential.
Right.
Just for a substation, then that would then feed residential customers. But the lines are networked in, so they can be taken out of service momentarily without affecting any outages or interruptions.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any additional? Yes, Commissioner.
Mr. Trout, if new structures are required, would we expect to see an additional filing from the company when that determination is made?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? All right, thank you, Mr. Trout. Mr. Irons, appreciate answering our questions. There's no other questions. Do we have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For item number 3, I move we note the work performed on an emergency basis on the Ringgold-Catoctin line pursuant to Public Utility Act 7-207B42, or II, and grant the company's request for a waiver of the CPCN requirement for this project pursuant to Public Utility Act 7-207B4I for construction of of the wood H-frame structure on the Finzel-Ridgely line as discussed in staff's comments dated November 21st, 2017.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think we can take items 4, 5, 6, and 7 collectively together.
Okay.
Items 4, 5, 6, and 7 are filings from Potomac Electric Power Company, Delmarva Power and Light Company, the Potomac Edison Company, and the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company. They're all SOS rate filings for Type 2 customers and Type 1 and residential as applicable.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Lloyd Spivak for the Commission staff. These items are respectively the revised Type 2 residential and Type 1 SOS rates for PEPCO and Delmarva, and Type 2 standard offer service rates for Potomac Edison and BGE. The filings specify Type 2 SOS rates for the upcoming quarter beginning December 1st, 2017, and for PEPCO and Delmarva, residential and Type 1 rates to be effective on June 1st, 2018. Type 2 SOS is provided to customers, commercial customers with peak load contributions greater than 25 kilowatts and less than 600 kilowatts. Per the Commission's orders, in case number 9056, Type 2 SOS is procured and priced on a quarterly basis. Type 1 SOS is provided to commercial customers with peak load contributions of less than 25 kilowatts. Per the Commission's order, in case number 9064, for the most part, Type 1 and residential are procured in 2-year contracts with procurement bids to be held twice per year, so that only 25% of the load is procured on a given bid day. The rates in the tariffs before the Commission today are derived from the competitive bidding that took place on October 16, 2017, with the results presented to the Commission in staff's report of October 20, 2017, and staff's review indicates that the rates are consistent with the results presented in October. For PEPCO, Type 2 SOS, the overall bill impact is a year-on-year decrease ranging from 7% to 11.45%, depending on the customer's rate class, and the quarterly change in the supply rate from the preceding fall quarter is an increase of just over 21.5%. For PEPCO Type 1, the overall bill impact is a year-on-year decrease of approximately 4.7% to 9.6%. For PEPCO Residential, the overall bill impact is a year-on-year decrease of approximately 3.3% and a supply decrease of approximately 6%. For Delmarva Type 2 SOS, the overall bill impact is a year-on-year change ranging from a decrease of approximately 1.8% to an increase of 9.1%, depending on the customer's rate class. The quarterly change in the supply rate from the preceding fall quarter ranges from an increase of 8.5% to a 35.9% increase. For Delmarva Type 1, the overall bill impact is a year-on-year decrease of approximately 0.7 to 8.6%, depending on the customer class. For Delmarva residential customers, the overall bill impact is a year-on-year decrease of approximately 0.5 to 0.7%, and a supply decrease of approximately 1.4%. For Potomac Edison, the overall bill impact is a year-on-year decrease of 1.8 to 2.9%, depending on the customer's rate class, and the quarterly change in the supply rate from the preceding fall quarter is a 23.1% increase. For BGE Type 2 SOS, the overall bill impact is a year-on-year decrease of 8.8% to 10.3%, depending on the customer's rate class, and the quarterly change in the supply rate from the preceding fall quarter is a 26.8% to 34.4% increase. Staff recommends that the tariffs be accepted for filing with an effective date of December 1st, 2017 or June 1st, 2018 as appropriate.
All right, thank you, Mr. Spivak. Any questions for our staff? If not, do we have a motion for items 4 through 7?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll give it a try. For items number 4 and 5, I move that we accept the revised tariff pages for filing with an effective date of December 1st, 2017 for Type 2 customers and an effective date of June 1st, 2018 for residential and Type 1 non-residential customers. And for items number 6 and 7, I move that we accept the revised tariff pages for filing with an effective date of December 1st, 2017.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next item on the agenda, item number 8, is Baltimore Gas and Electric Company filed supplement 437 to PSC Maryland G9, schedules IS and ISS. The company proposes to revise the calculation of the excessive use interruption penalty.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Annette Garofalo on behalf of Commission staff. Baltimore Gas and Electric Company proposes to revise its calculation of the excessive use interruption penalty with an effective date of December 1, 2017. BGE has 2 interruptible classes. Under Schedule IS, customers that use at least 250 therms per hour must interrupt their gas use within 6 hours, following receipt of notice by BGE. Under Schedule ISS, which is a smaller group, a group of customers who use less gas, interruptible customers that use at least 50 therms per hour must interrupt their gas use within 2 hours following receipt of notice by BGE. If an IS or ISS customer fails to interrupt timely after receiving notice from BGE, the customer will be assessed a monthly penalty beginning in May for a total of 12 months. The company's current tariff calculates monthly penalty by multiplying the average hourly use during the time of non-compliance by 24 hours by the number of days in the month by the distribution penalty price. However, if during any hour of the distribution system interruption, a customer's non-compliant usage exceeds 575 therms, then the customer must pay the excessive use distribution interruption penalty instead of the monthly distribution penalty. The excessive use penalty is currently calculated by multiplying the total non-compliant therms by the interruption event by the number of days in the month by the excessive use penalty price. Under the current tariff, in the circumstance where an interruption is less than 24 hours, a customer could receive a lesser penalty if the customer's use is considered to be excessive use. This could incentivize customers to increase their usage during an interruption event in order to qualify for the excessive use penalty instead of the monthly distribution penalty. The company's proposed tariff changes address this discrepancy. Under the proposed tariff changes, in the event that a distribution system interruption is less than 24 hours, the excessive use penalty will be calculated by multiplying the average of the hourly non-compliant therms by 24 hours, by the number of days in the month, by the excessive use distribution interruption penalty price, or by multiplying all non-compliant therms by the number of days in the month, by the excessive use distribution interruption penalty price. The higher of the two calculations will be the monthly excessive use interruption penalty for the customer. Staff believes that revising the excessive use penalty calculation in this way will address the discrepancy in the current language and will provide the correct incentives to interruptible customers to decrease their gas usage as much as possible during a distribution service interruption. The company also proposes 2 other changes to this portion of its tariff. The company proposes to revise Section 3.5 ICVP to include provisions that would require a customer that fails to comply with a distribution system interruption to participate in a physical interruption test prior to the next winter heating season. Currently, customers can enlist the services of a licensed professional engineer to certify that the appropriate equipment and/or procedures are in place to reduce gas usage to zero or to the contracted hourly optional firm delivery service volumes within the required time frame. As an alternative to a physical interruption test, as an alternative. Staff supports this revision because the physical interruption test, while more costly and time-consuming than enlisting the services of an engineer, yields more conclusive results, and staff believes the proposed language will appropriately incentivize customers to adequately prepare for future interruptions. Finally, BGE proposes to add language to Section 4.1 of the BGE Gas Commodity Service that had been inadvertently omitted from the tariff as part of Supplement 408 Optional Firm Delivery Charge. The additional language would include distribution system interruption to the current list of instances when the gas commodity price is not applicable for gas use. The additional language is administrative in nature and aligns with BGE's current business practices. Staff recommends the Commission accept the proposed amended tariff for filing with an effective date of December 1, 2016.
Thank you, Ms. Garofalo. Any questions for our staff? Will our Commissioner? No.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a question, Mr. Chairman, that's related to an item that I had an inquiry about yesterday during our PC 49 proceedings, and I understand that there may not be a precise answer to this, but I'll ask it of staff and then maybe the company as well. For our gas utilities, they have customers on these interruption tariffs. Do we know how much in an extreme weather condition, and I know that it might be a range or a nominal amount, how much we can expect to be able to reduce demand on our system should we have an extreme weather event, a polar vortex situation coupled with a transportation problem with the gas supply in the Northeast? Do we know how much gas we can, or demand we can reduce by utilizing these tariffs the way they were designed to be used?
Well, let me consult my brain trust, but we may have to get back to you on that one. So we think BGE could perhaps answer for BGE, but I think you're interested in something that would be more statewide, and we would have to research that and get back to you, and we'd be happy to do that.
Fair enough. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any additional? Yes, Commissioner. Wait for the company. Okay. Done. Commissioner Burton.
Actually, my questions are for the company.
Okay, well, we can always, yes, staff's not going anywhere. So
Okay.
We can always come back to staff if we have any questions. All right, we'll welcome Ms. Sikora. And any opening statements before we fire away with questions?
Well, actually not about this subject, but I just wanted to get back to Commissioner O'Donnell that you had another question yesterday about the Empower Maryland charges, whether or not any of our winter outreach communication costs were included in that. And I was able to confirm this morning that they're not. Those don't run through Empower Maryland. And actually a lot, I mean, other than printing, we use company labor, company employees to go out to the outreach events. So I don't think a lot of the outreach has significant incremental costs. So, but they do, whatever costs we do have, they don't run through the Empower Maryland surcharge.
Yes, interesting. If I might, Mr. Chairman, those outreach efforts by the utilities are great, and they do a lot with energy efficiency and certainly with low-income provisions of state public policy. But there's no formal tie to the Empower program, even though they may be producing results in that arena.
I think a lot, with those communications, those outreach efforts, we're communicating about a lot of different topics. So that I think trying to segregate it just related to the Empower Maryland aspect, while it will impact it, I don't think is really feasible just because we're generally talking to people about a whole host of subjects.
Very good. Thank you on that.
Why don't let me start and then we'll turn it over to my colleagues. Ms. Sikora, so can you talk about the outreach that BG&E has done to interruption customers with regard to these changes?
We have consulted with the account representatives that, work with the customers. They have not indicated any, concern about it. We did not reach out to the customers specifically, as far as I know, because these were more things that we felt needed to be done, as opposed to kind of proposals, with the interruption penalty. Again, it was to correct an error in the way we had come up with the calculation before, whereby someone with the excessive use might actually pay less, which, just was something that was, wrong and shouldn't be there. We did talk, I think, with some of the customers about the adding the physical interruption test if they fail the test, because actually we got pushback from customers who said, no, your tariff doesn't require me to take a test. I can do the certification from an engineer, and that's when we realized, oh, the tariff isn't, we had never intended that to be the case, so that was actually how it came to our attention when someone pushed back. So we didn't require them this year, even though they failed, they didn't interrupt the last time around that we had an interruption, but that's why we went and we put that language in the tariff, because we do think it's important that someone demonstrate, and it's also an extra incentive that they interrupt when they're called upon to do so.
All right, thank you. And so, second question is in terms of the revised, I guess, notification protocols that BG&E, was working on as a result of some of the filings we received for waivers. Are they all now in place for the upcoming winter season?
Yeah, we've got those worked out. The big one was, relying, we're making sure that we actually get in touch with someone. I think we are relying a little bit too much on, sending notifications without getting confirmation that they had been received. And now, of the various methods that we're using, whether it's, some people still have fax machines, email, or doing a dialer, we are requiring that we get, at least from one of them, some physical confirmation that it was received by the customer.
Great, thank you. Additional question? We'll start, Commissioner.
I went first last time. Did you want to go first, Commissioner Herman?
I just have a couple of quick questions. How many interruptible customers do you have, and generally what kind of customers are they?
I can say, generally they're industrial and some, larger commercial. Surprisingly, there are some schools and some other types of entities that are on schedule. We had a condominium that was on Schedule I as a condominium complex. Some of them, we've talked to them to really make sure that they're capable of interrupting when they need to. And, in those cases, we have confirmed that they do have backup generation or backup sources, if the gas has to be interrupted, so that they have something else to use, making sure that it wasn't just, them thinking that they'll have to shut down. So, that's something that we've really stressed in the last few years when we have had to interrupt, more frequently than we had in the in more distant past. So, we are making sure that customers can and will interrupt, no matter what kind of they are.
Thank you.
It's about 150.
Okay. And is this a problem that you've incurred often? Has the interruptible customers not actually interrupting?
We hadn't had an interruption for quite a few years, up until the 2014, the polar vortex. Luckily, we had started a couple years before that to, take efforts, as I think we were seeing that our system capacity wasn't as, we didn't have as much excess capacity, because we only design our system to meet the requirements of firm customers at a design day. When we saw that we didn't have perhaps the excess that we had in the past, we started, that's when we put in the testing protocol. That's when we, made sure that we had better communications in the event of a distribution system interruption. The polar vortex year 2014, we did have some issues with customers not interrupting, but I think people maybe didn't take it as seriously as they should have, but we've had them in 2014, 15, and I believe 16. We didn't have one in 17. But each year you can see people are, getting better, and, they're really making sure that they have the backups, or they have whatever procedures they need in place to interrupt when they have to. So, I think it was a bit of a learning curve at the beginning, but, I feel fairly confident now with the, experience that we've had, and then also with, us making sure that we're staying on top of people, that, things always happen. It seems like every year there's something that accidentally not blows up, but some piece of equipment that doesn't work, even though it was supposed to, so that, we do have customers that don't interrupt. But I think customers are realizing that, hey, this is something that, can and will happen, and they need to be prepared, or they need to move on to another rate schedule that they need to go firm. And we have had customers who said, you know what, you're right, I can't handle being interruptible, and they have moved. When we've been able to move them to a firm rate schedule, they have done so.
Okay, and when you do a physical test, is the company present, or how does the company know that that test took place?
We can tell by looking at their meter data. We have real-time meter data for those customers, so we can tell pretty quickly that that they have reduced their usage.
Okay. And finally, with respect to the administrative change that Ms. Garofalo mentioned last, how long has that been left off of the tariff?
2015, we believe.
I'm sorry?
2015.
Since 2015?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Richard?
Those are impact questions were really the same I had. Just maybe a quick follow-up on, as far as notifications, is there going to be a formal notification to all 150 of the IS and ISS customers about this change?
Yes, we will definitely make sure that each of the, because of the critical nature and the fact that we do have to communicate with these customers, each of these customers do have account reps. So we will make sure that the account reps are communicating with the customers to make sure that they're aware of these changes.
Okay, good.
And usually around this time, we're communicating with them about a lot of things, because with winter coming up, we want to make sure they remember all the rules of the games, or not, rules of the processes, and what can happen. So we'll make sure that that they include these with their communications.
Okay, good. I think you answered my other question with for the chairman about this new protocol as far as ensuring that the communication has taken place with the customers. So, finally, I guess I just wanted to understand, with these new calculations, do you have a sense, looking back at past fines, what would be the change in the fine? Are we talking about a 10% increase, 25% increase, doubling the fine? I just would like to understand also the impact of these new calculations, should there be a fine.
I'm gonna, again, it's only going to affect customers that it's only applicable to the excessive use, where if a customer uses more than 575 therms, and which is really only going to be a handful of customers that do that. And I think it's going to depend. This would only, what we had discovered was this really only impacted situations where we had an interruption for less than 24 hours. And so it's kind of hard to say what it's going to be, but I'll let Mr. Frayne explain.
John Frayne. We actually haven't had any customers who have used excessively in an interruption that was less than 24 hours so far. There's only been a couple instances where we've applied the excessive use penalty, and it's been during an interruption that's been 24 hours or longer, so we actually haven't seen any examples of what we're trying to rectify here. We're just trying to obviously get ahead of something that could potentially happen.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Just a follow-up, Ms. Kerr, Mr. Frayne. You heard my questions on how much capacity we could expect to interrupt should we have to exercise these tariffs in an extreme situation, and I'm trying to get a sense of if our gas utilities know that. And I know there are a lot of variables that go into it: the prevailing temperature, the particular customer usage at the time, et cetera, et cetera. So I know it's there's probably not a precise answer out there, but there may be a range of capacity that the utilities could expect to be able to curtail or interrupt when it's needed. So do you have a sense of that at BG&E?
I don't think we can, at least I can't tell you the number, because I don't know what our general capacity is for these interruptible customers. But we design our system to meet what we call the design day requirements of customers, which I think it's 15 degrees. And I can't remember the wind speed, but we have and we look historically to see what kind of have been the days when we've had peak usage. So we look at what we would expect all firm service customers, which are the residential, which are the small to medium commercial, or really, again, people that we design our system to meet their needs. So we look at that, and really then anybody else is, if we have an interruption, anybody who's interruptible has to come off, so that we have enough to serve the firm customers and then some, because we do have some amount of cushion.
If you don't know how much that is, how do you know if you have enough?
Oh, I don't know myself. I'm sure
Well, if the company doesn't know how much that is that you're going to interrupt when you exercise the tariff.
Well, but we're interrupting all interruptible customers.
I understand that, but I'm asking how much. I'm trying to get to how much.
I'd have to...
How much is your margin increase? You said you described your system design and you found that it wasn't robust enough maybe on your design day to provide, you didn't have enough margin. So I'm trying to figure out when these interruptions occur, for all the interruptions, how much capacity does that provide the system to increase your margin to be able to continue to provide your necessary customers?
I don't have that number offhand, but
Okay, that's
I
a
can get it.
reasonable answer.
I guess, FERB, our interruptible customers, they use what we can let them use. And so if we don't have it, they don't.
Right, but the company has to understand how much they're improving the design of their system by exercising this tariff. You
Oh,
have to understand
absolutely. They're running
So I'm asking
models
how much?
constantly.
How much is that? That's-
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
maybe we could work on.
Yeah,
taking a
we
look
can
at that.
certainly can.
Fair enough. Thank you.
And when it comes to the capacity coming to our city gate, from our interruptible customers, we don't have responsibility to provide them the gas. The interruptible customers have to provide their own gas coming to the city gate. So again, if we have a distribution system interruption or if we have any other problems, we aren't responsible for them. And actually, depending on the situation, we might not accept their gas if we don't have room to take it on our system.
I understand. I'm just trying to understand as a commissioner, if we have an extreme polar vortex with an interruption in supply to the northeast, how much we can expect our utilities to curtail usage by exercising these tariffs. I'm just trying to get a sense, not a precise answer.
I don't know the exact number, but I can assure you that people are watching the models constantly during those days to make sure that and they are not letting customers come on that could impact that. So.
I don't think my question is not, you're not being responsive to my question. I'm sorry, with all due respect, by saying that.
I don't memorize the amount of capacity that we have
I'm
on our
not asking
system.
you. Mr. Frank, could you maybe get back to me if you have a sense of what I'm asking?
I
Thank you.
apologize, sir, that I don't have the precise answer, but I don't
said
think
that up
it's,
front. I didn't necessarily expect you to.
I don't know that it's 10% or 20% or something.
Thank you.
It's not that simple.
Any additional questions on this item? If not, I would like to thank Ms. Suckling for her analysis. And do we have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I move we accept the revised tariff pages for filing with an effective date of December 1st, 2017.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, next item on the agenda, item number 9 is Sandpiper Energy, Inc. filed tariff pages incorporating the annual adjustment to delivery service rates as agreed upon in the settlement pursuant to Commission Order Number 87857.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Lloyd Spivak for the Commission staff. This is Sandpiper Energy's tariff revisions incorporating the annual adjustment to delivery service rates agreed upon in a settlement pursuant to Commission Order 87857 in case number 9410. An update to the original filing also includes the clean copy language for Sandpiper's System Improvement Rate Reconciliation Factor, which was approved at the Commission's administrative meeting of November 8th, 2017. Among other things, the settlement in case 9410 called for a revenue decrease to be implemented in annual stages over a 6-year period, with the current filing being the first of 6 annual filings to be made. As agreed upon in the settlement, the proposed rates reflect the annual savings of approximately $201,550 to Sandpiper customers. The language and rate pertaining to the System Improvement Rate Reconciliation Factor complies with what the Commission approved on November 8th. Staff recommends that the Commission accept the tariff for filing with an effective date of December 1st, 2017.
Thank you. Questions for staff? If not, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the Commission accept the revised tariff pages for filing with an effective date of December 1st, 2017.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, last item on the agenda is also a filing from Sandpiper Energy. It's also revised tariff pages reflect the new system improvement rate and calculations pursuant to Commission Order Number 85622.
This is Sandpiper Energy's tariff revisions to reflect its annual update to its system improvement rate. The system improvement rate applies to the residential and commercial sales service rate schedules for the purpose of recovering the cost of bare steel replacement and the cost of distribution system conversion and customer conversions for from propane to natural gas. The methodology for calculating the system improvement rate was approved by the Commission through its approval of a settlement in case 9303. The Ocean City specific system improvement rate is only applicable to Ocean City customers and includes an additional component for Ocean City's specific projects that exceed the level of new investment warranted by the anticipated revenues from the project. The recovery period runs from December 1st through November 30th of each year, and as a result of Sandpiper's recent filing, the amount collected is subject to an annual reconciliation factor to true up the amount collected with what is actually spent. Staff has reviewed the filing and believes that the system improvement rate was accurately calculated using the approved method. Staff recommends the Commission accept the tariff revisions for filing with an effective date for the 12-month period of December 1st through 2017 through November 30th, 2018.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spivak. Questions? Commissioner Mitchell.
Hey, just real quick, how long is this system improvement program expected to last? Is it multiple years, or I mean?
It is multiple years. I mean, they're gradually converting the system over to natural gas from propane.
Yeah.
I'm not sure of the exact number of the years. I'll let Ms. Suckling answer that.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Karen Suckling on behalf of staff. In the settlement, they had a 6-year plan that had projected conversions, and I believe the company can correct me, but I think that the company is allowed to come in for a rate case once they complete all the conversions. So either after 6 years or once the conversions are complete. But they are projected for 6 years. They've already completed more than half, and I think they expect to be done in the next 3 years.
3 years, oh, okay, great, thank you. And then the other question I had is just on the inside the home conversion activities. Is there a contribution made by the homeowner, or is that also just completely covered by the SIR charge?
It's all included in the SIR charges.
It is, oh, okay, great, thank you.
Let me ask a follow-up question. Do you know the average kind of residential impact of the SIR?
Yes, so just 1 second, I have that answer. So for the average residential Sandpiper customer, they use 275 CCFs per year. And so with the change in the SIR rate, that would be an average increase in $2.47 per month. However, there's also an additional part. So the system improvement rate is for converting the propane system to natural gas. So the customers are also receiving savings as the system is being converted. And so those savings are seen through the gas service, the GSR. So even though the increase in the system improvement rate is $2.47 per month, there also will see a decrease in their other costs seen by the converting the propane to the natural gas.
All right, thank you. So the $2.47 is the increase for the average
Yes.
residential. So do you know what the total would be then with the $2.40 as an average monthly impact?
No, I don't have that. The company
Okay.
potentially has that.
Could you repeat that question, Mr. Chairman?
The question is just what, with this change, what the total SIR average residential monthly impact is.
All right, I've got Matt Evergnam from the company here. I think he can answer that.
Chairman, are you speaking to the difference between the savings from the GSR impact from removing the propane, or the or just the singular?
Yeah, well, we
SIR
can
increase?
either will be fine. So.
Well, I do not have the savings on the GSRs. That's a very dynamic number because you've got the changes in the different commodity prices and the spread, which changes on a daily basis. So we do not have those specific numbers. As far as the total increase in the SIR, the total SIR charge should be in the filing. I don't have a copy in front of me. What's that? I mean, are you speaking of the increase in the SIR goes from $2.10 per natural gas CCF to, that would be for MCF, to $3.18 per MCF.
So that's the average residential.
Oh, I apologize now. The average residential I know was sent to Karen in a email and a calculation, but I do not actually have a copy of that. I apologize.
All right. Any additional questions? Okay, if not, thank you, gentlemen. I want to thank our staff. Do we have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For item number 10, I move we accept the revised tariff pages for filing to be effective for the 12-month billing period of December 1st, 2017 through November 30th, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you,
That's our
Commissioners.
last item. I want to thank everyone for coming today. We are adjourned.